Andy, welcome back to Yorkshire. Great to have you back up here. Got to ask you, why is Rotherham the right club for you? Why is this the right move for you?
Interesting one, yeah. I think it's we've been in the pub trade for the last sort of 4.5 years, and I think the timing with other jobs that I've been doing in and out of rugby, a bit in Italy, a bit with Cambridge University, and more recently with Leicester Lions. I think it's a case that I've always wanted to get back into full-time rugby, and it's just been about waiting our time. And I think Rotherham at the moment, where they are, I think it fits everything to do with my skill set and what I'm about. So I'm really looking forward to the challenge that's ahead.
How big a challenge is it? Because it's a great club with great people involved here that has recently been in the playoffs, but the last couple of years haven't been good. So how do you plan to turn it around?
Well, probably just like we did up at Leeds in one sense. You know, the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks has been very much about trying to understand the club, appreciate what it's about, what makes it tick, you know, from a point of view of staff and players. So it's just been doing really an internal audit. And as a result of that, you know, I think there's a lot of good things that we can see that have been in place. But yeah, there's a few things that we've got to clearly tweak and we've got to put right. And you know, although we can't do much come this end of the season, one of the things we can do is which I've been doing, is really starting to put the squad together with existing and new players, a couple of changes with staff going forward, and then starting to communicate that. And you know, probably this is one of the first interviews that we're doing that's going to probably do just that.
How do you plan to build a quality squad for next season? Because quite often in rugby, players are committed for next season by January, February, if not earlier. How are you going to get the players you want?
Yeah, you're right. I think that, to be fair, the sort of players that Rotherham, you know, sort of like to associate themselves with, and what the club's about, in not only being successful as a club in its own merits, but also, you know, giving the opportunity to the younger players. I think as a Premiership, you're probably right. I think when you're in that environment, you know, you do need to get in there January, February, March latest with certain players. But I think at this level, you know, there's a lot of differences to do with salaries, to do with availability, their age, and there are a lot of talented players out there. The one thing this last 4 weeks, 5 weeks has opened my eyes up again is with loads of agents giving me clips of players, is how good, you know, the players are. And it's a shame in one sense that they probably, for some of them, have to scrap to get a position. But for us, that's a real positive, because you know, I've had an opportunity at the moment to really identify, I think, what the type of game that I like to bring, what Rotherham are about, and I think we're not far off, to be fair, Gareth. We're not far away of probably having a squad for next season that I think will reflect what this club's always been about.
Sometimes, particularly in the Championship, success or decline on the field kind of goes hand in hand on how strong you are off the field. You're going to have a bit of a background, but I suppose people don't know that you're quite heavy with Leicester Lions, I suppose, doing things off the field there. A long time ago in Leicester Tigers days, you're on the business side of things. Is that something you might get involved in and share your experiences on that side if you can, kind of spreading the word of Rotherham off the field as well as on it?
Oh, that's it. That's massively important. I mean, interestingly, although I've coached in the game probably ever since it went professional, starting with the academy down at obviously Leicester, as you know, but in that sense, I never played. I only played in the amateur era, you know, at Leicester, Bedford, and a year at Nottingham. So in that sense, you know, I think you got brought up very much understanding the values of what a club's about, you know. So it doesn't matter which club I'm involved in. The minute I sort of accept that that's the club I'm going to, it's my club. And I'd like to think that we'll slowly but surely ensure that the new players coming in understand that there's a lot to do, on the field, and there's a lot to do in a sense around the training field to get players right. But there's a lot that we all need to do off the field to understand that this is our club.
It is a special club that has a great weight of history on it. Do you kind of feel that kind of pressure to try and get it back where it feels it needs to be?
Yeah, do you know what the interesting thing is I'm not sure that that's actually going to take a huge amount, because I think it's there. I think it's there because the people around want it. You know, sometimes in some environments you have to go and find them and fish for them. I don't think you've got to do that here. I think it's just a case of sort of knocking on the doors and saying, we're back again. This is what we've got going, you know, and come back and be a part of the club that you've always loved. And I think, you know, yeah, maybe we've got to do a few things early on to give them the confidence that it's going to be consistent through the season. But I know, you know, the coaches that we've brought in, both on the conditioning and the assistant coach with myself, you know, we're all massively keen to resurrect what this club was about probably over 2 years ago.
And just looking at you kind of personally, since you were sacked at Leeds, you've gone and had other successes at other clubs, but do you feel, because the way it ended there, you come back to Yorkshire with a point to prove personally? No.
I think, you know, things happen, you move on from them. I thoroughly enjoyed my, you know, sort of 2.5 years there with Leeds, and I think, you know, we were hugely successful. I never look back at that as a failure at all. I always look at it as a huge success. I think taking the side that we did, you know, with the players' massive support from the Championship into the Premiership and then staying there was a huge challenge, especially when you look back on what we had as a budget compared to the very top. And even then, you know, right at the end of the death, I always remember, because I went to the game in Northampton, when you thought that if we'd have actually kicked the corner and scored off of that line out, they'd have stayed up. So it was, you know, it was always a good time to reflect on. Thoroughly enjoyed my time, and I'm looking to hopefully have as much fun and good time here at Rotherham.
How do you think you developed as a coach over the last couple of years?
Well, interestingly, because I've exposed myself in certain areas that I think the professional era probably doesn't always ask of you. I mean, I went over to Italy to a place called L'Aquila that were trying to rebuild the whole of the town from an earthquake that they had back in 2009. I mean, when you talk about sort of coming back down to earth and understanding what they had to go through, and here you are trying to sort of do things on a rugby front, it puts a sense of reality back in. Then I went to Cambridge University, again understanding that you're not always going to get the players at the time that you want to, and we had to work things out of how we get the best out of players with people that want to represent the university at one of the biggest stages and oldest stages in rugby history. You know, but you can't. We couldn't do that on a daily basis like you do in a professional environment. We had to do it at times where it most suited the kids in and out of their education. And then on to Leicester Lions, which, you know, although are fighting hard to want to be in that next tier, which is probably going into Division 1 from Nat 2 North, you know, they're been a hugely successful club over the last 12 years, having been in that league for a long time. But again, it brings you back down to the roots that it's a club, it's a family club, it's a simple club, and there's times when you're setting a session out for a Tuesday evening and you get 4 guys phoning up saying, can't make it tonight, got work commitments, and all of a sudden you're having to change things. So I think this last 4 years, it's just helped me massively to understand the importance of a club, and how to actually develop more your overall coaching because of the level of players that you're coaching. So I think there's a lot more understanding on my side and appreciation of that, you know, we're not always going to get everything right first time, but what we'll do, there'll be massive endeavour to ensure we do.
I know you're obviously just getting back into kind of Yorkshire rugby and being busy elsewhere in the country with your rugby work, but how do you view the state of Yorkshire rugby from when you left last time? You've got obviously Rotherham that have been sadly bottom of the league, but Doncaster and Yorkshire in the playoffs, but Yorkshire arguably stuttering where they are now. How do you see it all?
Well, I think that's a good success. I mean, you look at, as I say, the teams that which we're in with Leicester Lions in Nat 2 North, and you come up here to Harrogate, Otley, that are in those particular leagues. You've got Hull Ionians that are in Div 1. I mean, Yorkshire has been a bedrock for rugby over the years, and I think it still continues. You know, and I think what you've just said there, you know, this year Doncaster and Yorkshire Carnegie in the playoffs only tells you that it's a strong area to be.
Does it the area need Premiership rugby? You've experienced the Premiership with a Yorkshire club. Do you think it needs it, or can it be sustainable if they're all at Championship level?
I think everything can be sustainable. It's about putting together, and you've only got to look at Exeter, haven't you, in the sense of how they came out of the Championship after ourselves, and the model that they have. If there's ever a club that wants to come out of the Championship, you'd want to have a close look at the way that Exeter have done it and moved on and have been extremely successful. So I mean, no, I think any county, you know, would love to have a Premiership side in it, and why couldn't? There's a place here because it's big enough for 2 Premiership sides. You know, I think it's just a case of getting the infrastructure right, so when you get in there, you have the ability to stay.
So how much of a long-term project is this for you? Obviously short-term, you need to get them going again next season, but is this a long-term Exeter? Or something maybe less without putting pressure on? Is it a long-term plan for you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I come into this because we're at a place where, you know, I think there's a case you could say that maybe the club are feeling sorry for themselves. I think that, you know, players feel different emotions from being let down to, you know, now feeling that they know there's something happening. So there's a lot of different emotions at the moment around the club. But for me, when I come into projects like this is, to me, you know, I'd like to think minimum 3 year. You know, by the time that we start getting things together, we've got to stop whatever's happening at the moment, which I'm pretty confident with the team that we've got both on and off the field that will happen. And then we've got to grow from there. We've really got to develop it, and we've got to develop it, I think, at the pace that the club wants to go, rather than, you know, just my ambitions. I mean, nothing would please me more than to think that we could help this club get back into the Premiership. But I think, you know, first things first, we need to make sure that we become a very competitive side in the Championship.
Well, Andy, it's great to have you back in Yorkshire. We know how committed you always are with all the jobs you do, so we wish you best of luck here at Rotherham Titans.
Thanks a lot,
See you again.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.